So hi you guys and welcome to my video on FPL terminology. The idea came for this video when I was chatting to some people on Twitter about FPL, and some people, seasoned pros and new people to the game, didn't understand the shorthand or the terminology I was using. So I thought it'd be a really good idea to do a video. It's not meant to be patronising in any way. Hopefully it's just to help you out so you guys can understand some of the stuff that's around on Twitter and whatever it is your mates are chatting about for the new FPL season. So without further ado, let's take a look at some of the terminology you might encounter. First up, of course, we have the really simple, easy one, and it'd be rude not to start there with FPL. Of course, FPL stands for Fantasy Premier League. The one, the only. But another one you might have seen around is GW. GW stands for your game week. So managers might use it to specify what game week we're talking about. You might see around game week 13, I bought Lukaku, for instance. And then you might encounter another that says GP. GP stands for your game week points. The points you've earned that specific game week from your players. This is closely followed by GR. Your game week rank. That's how many points you've gathered in a game round against other players playing in the game. Both of these though will tally up to your OP. That's your overall points. These are the points you've amassed over all of the game weeks that you've played. And all of these will add up to your OR. That's your overall rank. That's the big one really that a lot of the community focus on, because it shows how well you're doing against everyone else in the game, everywhere in the world, and shows how good of a manager you actually are. Of course, if you are an ML, that's a mini league player, rather than an OR player, those two things might be slightly different for you. Next up, you might hear around TF. That stands for your transfers. So for example, I might have TF'd Ericsson for Salah and gained a lot of points that game week. And during that conversation, I might also mention TM, which is my transfers made. Another shorthand you might have seen around is BPS. That stands for the bonus points system. That's used by the official Premier League website to give extra bonus points to the players they feel have done well that game week. One that's mentioned often around defenders is CS. That stands for clean sheets. That's the big one that most people want to hear about when it comes to their defenders, because that's where you'll get most of your points unless you have an attacking defender in your team. Now there are a couple to mention that are specific to the game, and a few you'll hear around chips. The first of those being BB, that means bench boost. This means when you play this bench boost chip in the game, all of the points that you've gathered on your bench are included in your GP game week points for that week. And then we have TC, that's your triple captain chip. This chip allows you to get triple points from whichever player you decide to give the triple captain chip to that week. And you may also see some people put C in brackets next to a player every game week. That means because you get to choose a captain for the game every week that gets you double the points. So when they put that C in the brackets next to a player, for instance Salah, it means they'll get double Salah's points for that GW. Then we have your FH, that's your free hit chip. Your FH means that you can basically transfer all of your players out for one game week, get a whole new team in for one game week only, and as soon as the game week is over, your team gets reverted back to how it was before. All of the chips just mentioned though, just a little tip, once you've used them, they're gone. You can only use them once, so just be wary of that. And then some people include these in chips, some people don't. We have our WC. No, that is not the toilet. That is your wild card. And we get 2 of these in a season, one the first half and one in the second. That allows us to make unlimited transfers to get a whole new team if we like. But in all of these cases, you have to stick to your budget. If you've earned money, then great, you can spend it. If you haven't, then you can't. Other terms widely used around the community are differential. A differential is a player with a low ownership amongst FPL managers. This term is commonly used when players are trying to catch other players in their mini league. They might try and choose a differential player, somebody completely different in their mini league, to try and make way and move up the rankings. One you might have seen around and made famous by a certain podcast is WGTA, and that's who got the assist. A question that's close to every FPL manager's heart is when a goal goes in, we instantly want to know the WGTA, because players who get assists get points in this game, and it's just as important half the time if your player doesn't score to who exactly got the assist. Another one that I've only just recently learnt myself is OOP. That is an out of position player. For instance, last season Zaha played up front as a forward and therefore has been reclassified in the game as a striker now, whereas last season he was a midfielder playing OOP. So he was a midfielder playing in a forward position. This season it'll be interesting to see if there are many other players playing OOP, because that's where sometimes you can sneak the extra points, like a defender for instance playing in a midfielder's position. Then you might come across the term cheap enabler. This is a player that allows you to spend a small amount of money on them to enable you to spend your cash on a better player or a more expensive player that you think will get you better returns. And this is usually closely followed by the term bench fodder, because we'll often spend cheap money on the bench because we're likely not to use them during the season. So there are a lot of seasoned pros that will use a cheap enabler as their bench fodder to enable them to afford somebody like Lukaku, for instance. And then we have set and forget. Set and forget is used on a player, usually a goalkeeper, because you'll set somebody like De Gea, an expensive goalkeeper, in goal and you'll leave him there for the rest of the season, barring rotation or injury. But set and forget has also been used in a term such as Salah or Kane. Really good players that you just want to leave in your team. You just want to set them in position, whether that be midfield or forward, and forget about them because they do well every week regardless of fixtures. And the last two are price to buy and price to sell, and they pretty much do what they say on the tin. Your price to buy is however much it costs you to buy a player from the official fantasy game, and your price to sell is whatever the price it is you can sell that player at, whether you've made a profit or loss on them. And that's it, you guys. I hope it's helped. I've been FPL Nimfria. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and do all those fabulous things. Nimfria out.